Hello, you are now entering the infinite void. Hang on tight. We cannot save you now.
Hello and welcome to this week's episode. I'm your co-host Jacob.
And I'm your co-host Matty, and this week's episode is on the Artemis project. So, we've sort of mentioned it before, haven't we, Artemis? A few sort of bits about it. And personally, I know I said in a previous podcast, like NASA doing big stuff is, for me, like the pinnacle of space exploration. Like, this is what I absolutely love.
Yeah, no, I'd agree with you. I actually think, like, since we've probably started the podcast, there's like been little drips like out from NASA about what they're doing with it and what the plan was, because I think it originally started with the Artemis Accords, didn't it? With like how they were going to be like treating the moon and like dividing it up and stating that nobody owned it and all this kind of stuff. So I haven't been watching it like super closely, but I've been aware that they've been doing it. And like for me as a child, it was always, why haven't we got our like moon missions and why aren't we doing cool stuff like that? So it's finally cool to like actually have a program with a set targeted goal, and we're going to do it hopefully.
I think for me, the date is like one of the most important things, knowing that like in 2024, if all goes to plan, like we will have people back on the moon is just, I absolutely love it.
Yeah, no, I think it's awesome. And like, I really want that too. I really want to see that live. I want to be able to watch it because like, I can still watch the original like moon landings and stuff now and get super pumped. So like, it's going to be awesome when we've got wicked cameras and all this cool stuff. And like even just with like social media, the hype behind it is going to be crazy. Like we saw that even with like Launch America and like Demo 2 and Crew 1 and stuff. So I'm super excited. It's going to be really fun. And I can imagine they'll have loads of events and stuff planned around it too. So
I guess, shall we just start with like a bit of a description about what Artemis is for people that maybe don't know what Artemis project is?
Yeah, I've got it open up on the website unless you've got something written down.
No, NASA is as good a source as any.
So straight off the website, it says, with the Artemis program, NASA will land the first woman and the next man on the moon by 2024 using innovative technologies to explore more of the lunar surface than ever before. We will collaborate with our commercial and international partners and establish sustainable exploration by the end of the decade. Then we will learn what we have learned on and around the moon and take the next giant leap, sending astronauts to Mars, which is just pretty much sums it up pretty well, I think.
Yeah, so I think that's exactly it, isn't it? And I think Artemis in mythology is like the sister of Apollo, I think. So
yes.
They're sort of playing on that like Saturn V sort of Apollo generation like space exploration thing, aren't they? Which I think is great, and I think like as a media point of view, it like plays really well, doesn't it?
Yeah, no, I'd agree with you because like humans just love finding like beauty and stuff, and I think that this is like a great example of that. Like we've managed, like it's writing the story before it's even happened. Like it already sounds beautiful and we haven't even really started it properly yet. I know we're like building it, but I just mean like the actual missions. But yeah, no, I'd agree with you. And I think it's cool that this time around as well, it's not just like NASA, like they're willing to like collaborate with companies like Blue Origin and Boeing and SpaceX. And as we'll discuss in a little bit, even like international partnerships with like other countries too. So I think it seems really promising, and this is the kind of stuff that you really want happening in space. It's kind of like the International Space Station. It's like a world effort almost.
Yeah, I think there's like two sides. That I think the commercial thing is really interesting because it sort of opens up more possibilities and sort of like funding wise. You know, these companies have sort of technical people and expertise and money that NASA just doesn't have.
Yeah.
And then you take like obviously SpaceX, they're able to put so much like clout behind it. I think that's sort of one side of it. But then sort of on the like more humanitarian thing, like actually doing internationally and sort of representing Earth rather than just like America, because obviously like the Apollo mission was amazing, but like it very much was like we're America, we can beat the Soviet Union kind of thing.
Yeah.
So I think it's really cool to see them sort of linking up with other sort of space agencies on this and doing it more for Earth as a place rather than just sort of like one country's interests.
Have I read somewhere that the UK is doing something with it, or is it just the spaceport, or have I got that completely wrong? Because I think I saw something somewhere that the UK Space Agency had agreed a deal with like launching from their spaceport or something that they're planning on building, but I don't know if it was for Artemis or if it was just helping NASA with launches.
I'm not sure. I think they are. I think the UK Space Agency is still sort of signed up with the European Space Agency as like a partner of it. So I'm not sure like what their contribution is or if it's even been like defined entirely yet. But I think they're still like in a partner sort of stage. But,
the CEO stepped down today, didn't they? I haven't read why yet. It was literally like breaking an hour ago before we've come and sat on recording. But
I've not seen that.
they literally posted like whilst I was just before I came up here something about how the CEO had stepped down, and there was a giant statement, but I hadn't read it yet. So
that was CEO of UK Space Agency.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I'm not sure if something's gone on or if he's just stepped down, but yeah, that has happened today. So that'll probably be in next week's news for anybody listening now. But they basically kind of break it down into like a few different areas that they're planning on accomplishing this mission. And we figured for this episode, listeners, that we'd kind of just go through them a little bit and try and explain them, because some of them I knew about and some of them I actually didn't know about. And they've got some pretty cool names too. So I think it'll be fun to just kind of go through it and see what they're planning on doing, because it's not just as simple as sending a rocket. And I think as we'll learn in this episode too, like they plan to do a lot up on the moon as well. It's not just visiting it again.
Mm-hmm.
So should we start with exploration ground systems? Because that one's probably the least fun.
I don't know. Like, it definitely sounds the least fun, but exploration ground systems on the Artemis website is basically launch facilities. Launch facilities on Earth. And you say it's not fun, but I love these things. Like the crawler that they use to like transfer the rocket from the assembly center to the actual launch pad, and then I still think there's a lot of work they're doing to prepare Launch Pad 39B for the Space Launch System rocket.
Yeah.
And 39B is like the historic one, which Saturn V sort of always launched from. So like, I love this stuff. I really do love it.
I get that. I think just me being me, I really want to go to space. So for me, it's like all the cool stuff that they're doing up there. But I do kick myself because a couple of years ago, well, not even a couple of years ago, actually, it's probably a lot more than that now, because I forget how old I am now, even though I'm young. But when I was like mid-teens, we went down to Florida and we went to the Kennedy Space Center and all of that kind of stuff. But I wasn't as interested as I was now. And we like got to go and see all of the launch sites and like the giant building that they have. And I got to go and see like all the rockets and stuff like all around the center. But it was like 100 degrees. It was super humid. And like, I was of that age where I was like, oh, I want to go to like Universal Studios and like Disneyland and all this kind of stuff. So like, I was just really struggling because I was this British kid with family that were from Texas that were used to the heat. So I was like walking around just absolutely melting away while they wanted to stop and look at all these things. And looking back on it now, I see all the stuff and I'm like, oh my God, I've been there. Oh my God, I've been like on a tour there. And I really do wish I'd paid a little bit more attention. But no, I'd agree. I think it's definitely needed to having these ground systems, because obviously we can't just go manual from the rocket from space. But do you want to break down roughly what they do?
Yeah, so the ground system, this exploration ground systems, is basically this team that NASA set up to sort of manage the transition from what was the Kennedy Space Center to what will be the Kennedy Space Center. So like readying the facilities for Artemis, because I think NASA, well, we've seen NASA is using more commercial partners. So I think the Kennedy Space Center is going to be almost exclusively for their part of it is going to be almost exclusively for like Space Launch System when
Yeah.
Artemis arrives. So they're doing a lot of that, but yeah, but basically, like the technology they have is obviously the mobile, the crawler that they use. That's like my personal favorite sort of thing.
Is that the giant thing with like the tracks that carries everything?
Yeah, a giant thing of tracks that like moves the rocket while it's upright.
Yeah.
Like I just think that's absolutely incredible. It's absolutely huge, this thing. But yeah, yeah, and then obviously you have the actual launch facilities themselves. So the launch pad is being prepared for the Space Launch System to obviously have all the umbilical collections and stuff, and then the like crew transport that gets them up there. Because we're going to come on to it in a bit, the actual rocket itself, but with it being bigger and sort of with a heavier lift than just about anything else, they sort of having to prepare for that.
Yeah, I can imagine that they need to obviously change the structure of a lot of the like launch sites, as you were saying, because this rocket is a lot bigger than the Saturn V. So I can imagine that there's probably some structuring stuff that they need to move around. Because when they launched even like the Falcon 9s in the Demo 2 and the Crew 1s off a certain pad, they had to like re-concrete aspects of it and change how it was for the launch.
Yeah, there's always a lot of, I think the you have the physical sort of constraints of like the dimensions and geometry of the rocket, like how is it going to be held on there, but then even stuff like the acoustics and stuff, the sort of noise that this thing chucks off is so vast that they sort of have to account for that and like engineer it, and obviously it's literally rocket science, so it's not easy to do. But yeah,
because I only recently just learned this. They launch from Florida for like a specific reason, don't they, with like the direction and everything, so it can like
so
go up out of Earth's orbit with like, is it less energy or is it
so the reason is that when you're at you want to be as close to the equator for these launches as possible, because the Earth is spinning. Like if you imagine right at the North Pole, you're basically not moving, you're just turning around. Whereas at the equator, because of the radius of the Earth, you're like moving really quickly. So you get this sort of like you get this assist from the just motion of the Earth that helps. And then obviously you want to be going with the Earth, so you want to be launching out to the east, which means that you have to be on the eastern seaboard, otherwise you're launching over America and potentially sort of populated areas. So
is that I'm guessing that's why then as well, like Russia launched from Kazakhstan because it's closer to the equator too then.
It's slightly closer and there's basically no one there, so or you just do what China does and just launch it over.
Let it like completely drop and wreck areas. But so that's why that's sort of a problem we have in the UK of our launch systems. We're planning to launch in, I think it's one in Newquay and one in, is it the Hebrides or Shetland Islands, the spaceports they're planning? Yeah. What happened to the one in Cornwall? Sorry.
Newquay and Cornwall.
The
one they're planning. But like we can't really do these launches. We're more suited to, rather than going around the Earth, going over the north and like the poles, because we just don't have the gravity, the assist from the being at the equator. So, but yeah,
it'll be interesting when we actually finally launch something to like see that trajectory, because my mind's got so used to seeing rockets like leave Florida or like Kazakhstan that it'll be really weird to see a rocket like launch from the UK and have a different trajectory. It'll be interesting. But this next bit, so the what's going to be launching from this ground system, this has got to be your favorite bit, right? You love giant rockets. Hence the Lego one in the background, if nobody's noticed yet.
So Space Launch System, this is going to be the world's most powerful rocket ever built. It's going to be awesome. That's the bottom line.
I think I might be wrong with this, but I saw somewhere that it's 1.5 million, is it pounds or tons of thrust?
I don't know how the Americans do it.
It's one of them, but there's like a fact sheet on the NASA website that I was looking at for this, and it's massive. Like, I don't know if anybody follows me on like social media or anything, but I was sharing some photos of them like building some of the staging for it, and it's insane. It's so big.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's so much bigger than anything else that we've launched up yet.
Yeah.
It's going to be
Yeah,
awesome.
I think it's. I can't remember off the top of my head. I think it's slightly shorter than Saturn V.
Yeah.
Slightly shorter, but then obviously it's got 2 solid rocket boosters on the side of it. So
Yeah.
actually, size-wise, it's much bigger.
Yeah. It's just thick is the best way to describe it. It's massive.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I'm seeing if I can get the fact sheet up now, just so we could put the pounds versus tons to bed.
But yeah, the description for it was basically it's NASA's most powerful rocket, isn't it? And it's going to be sending humans and cargo to the moon. And then I think they're also planning it for like Artemis 2 and 3 and everything after Artemis to maybe even go to Mars. Obviously, they'll probably make adjustments to it, but it looks like this is going to be the next rocket for NASA for the foreseeable future. But yeah, they're calling it the deep space, the agency's first deep space rocket. So it does look like they're going to be using it to take it to other planets as well as the moon. But yeah, no, it does look awesome.
So yeah, they've got they refer to them as blocks, like these different variants that they have. So like blocks 1 and block 1B and block 1 cargo sort of thing. So there's slightly different variants, but the actual rocket itself, I think, so the orange main booster and then the solid rocket boosters on the side of it is the same across all of them, pretty much. So like that is designed to get us to Mars, and it's the actual top bit which is going to be changed. I think it's got an extra stage to get to Mars, or a larger second stage to get to Mars, with obviously a bigger sort of payload capacity. But yeah, I've got here. So the largest one, which is the Block 2, which I think is the one that's going to get us to Mars, is £9.5 million for us, which is insane.
It's going to be so loud when this thing launches.
Yeah,
I'm kind of jealous that. Well, I'm going to do everything in my power to be in Florida when this launches, because even when I went to have you ever been to the Kennedy Space Center?
No, but yeah, I'm pretty set on going in 2024.
Yeah, I want to be there when humans leave the planet because it's insane. Mm-hmm. But yeah. they have like a room in there that's all like designed like the Apollo missions, and the room shakes like just like it did when the Saturn V rockets took off, and like it's kind of like the Natural History Museum thing in London where they show you the earthquake and like the room is like rocking back and forth and everything. And it's insane. So I can imagine that this is going to be even more crazy if you're like at ground level near it. Obviously, to the publics, they're not going to be not in the control room like that. They're going to be on the coasts and stuff. But it's going to be awesome to watch. Like you said, I'm going to do everything in my power to be out there for it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so just reading now, they refer to this exploration upper stage. So this is like the upper stage, which has been designed to get people sort of off the planet. So the Space Launch System, I think, also has the capacity for sort of heavy lift to orbit. So I think with like plans of like a space station, or if something major needs to be lifted, it can lift a lot to orbit. But then there's this exploration upper stage, which has the capability to get Block 1B, 42 tons to the moon. So that's sort of the capability of it. Yeah.
That's insane. Well, yeah, because it's going to need to carry obviously the Orion spacecrafts, the other lunar landers, and the Gateway, because that is they're building basically a space station, aren't they, to orbit the moon, which we'll get to in a minute. But yeah, I think the next bit then is obviously this is going to be carrying the Orion spacecraft, which is going to help carry crew and other bits of human like stuff, I guess, just cargo. And I don't know if the Orion thing's going to be doing much more than that, but Orion's also designed to take humans to and from the moon as well, aren't they? And then bring them safely back into Earth. But it looks pretty awesome. It just looks like a classic kind of like spacecraft pod that they would use for re-entry. But in the infographic, it does look cool sitting at the top of the SLS.
Mm-hmm.
But do you know if so I'm guessing then with the Orion one, it's reusable, isn't it? It's going to have its own landing system and takeoff system, just like the old kind of lunar landers.
Yeah, so I think it works pretty much in the same way as the old style ascent modules that they used for Apollo. So yeah, not a massive amount of sort of change for this, and I guess there's not that much to change. You know, it has to hold people and get them there safely. That's what it does.
Yeah, no, I'd agree. I wonder, like with these kind of things, if we're ever going to go for like more of an aesthetic thing. Like we've always discussed in like our like space tourism episode, and like talking just about the future of like space exploration in general. Like I wonder if these kind of modules and aspects of the launch are going to become more commercialized and might have like, I don't know, like heat sensitive glass or more windows, because you're seeing it with like SpaceX and even like some of the Virgin Galactic stuff. Do you know what I mean? There's more of this aspect to be able to see where you are in space. Not that it matters, because it's all guided by a computer most of the time or by an algorithm, but it does interest me because it's kind of the same with Orion. It's the same as what they've used before, and I can't imagine, like, not that it matters to the astronauts because they're going there for a mission, but I wonder in the future with these kind of modules being attached, if there does become a tourism aspect to it, if they will have like more windows or there'll be more commercial aspects on these modules, not just heat shields, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think for now it is still sort of like humans as a species, we're still sort of like in the research stage.
Yeah.
Like this is only the second time this is only the second program to get us off the planet.
Yeah.
And
yeah, I always forget that.
I guess like it's, you know, we're still in 1900, and to like if we were like talking about cars, we're still in the days of sort of quad bikes and wooden benches kind of thing.
No,
so
I'd agree.
Yeah, and I think, I guess just safety, because one of the other sort of topics we'll come on to is sort of spacesuits, and like looking at the SpaceX spacesuits, I think they look awful. Like, I think they look truly terrible.
Yeah, you don't like them, do you?
No, but I guess like it has to serve a function for first and foremost, and like the more complex and the more nice you make it, there's more stuff to go wrong. And you know, if you're talking about putting windows, okay, well, if you want to say, oh, we're going to make this like part of the spacecraft, we're going to put like a couple of windows on it, well, that's, you know, maybe 1,000 rivets and like 4 pieces of like of window and like loads of seals that could all go wrong, when you could just have one piece of sheet metal that would do it. Like,
yeah, no, I agree with you, and especially for the Artemis missions, like they're not really doing it for scenery or to give an astronaut an experience. Do you know what I mean? It's more so there's a mission, we need to go there and figure out how we can make this mission sustainable, and how we can like obviously turn it into a bit of a, because effectively the Artemis missions, without like oversimplifying it, they kind of want to turn the moon into like a gas station, don't they, or a spaceport, so that they can use it going forward to the rest of the planet. So yeah, no, I'd agree with you. That's just me taking on my silly tourism view on it, being like, how can we make it more fun? But obviously no one's going to care about that for a while.
But yeah, the Orion stuff is going really well, actually. I think it's progressing pretty decently, isn't it? So they've already sort of tested quite a lot of it. So I think quite recently they did was it about a year ago, maybe 18 months ago, they did the test of the abort system.
Yeah.
So like the tower that's going to go on top, so that if anything goes wrong, it will sort of pull the sort of crew capsule away from the rest of the rocket. You know, they did a test of that, and that seemed to go pretty well. So,
well, they've been working on the Orion for a lot longer before they announced Artemis, haven't they? Because I was going to say, like, even before I'd heard of Artemis, I knew that they were working on the Orion spacecraft.
Yeah, I think Artemis is sort of like pulled together a few like loose ends that NASA had and didn't know, because like the space launch system as well, it's been around for a while, and I know at one point they were like struggling. There's like talking about funding being cut to it because like it didn't really have a purpose. They're like, okay, well, you're building this massive rocket, you don't have any real plans to use it.
Yeah,
We've got commercial and Soyuz rockets that can get us to the space station. You don't have an actual plan to go to the moon. Like, what are you building it for? And the same with Orion, like you've got this capsule, but what do you actually plan to do with it?
Yeah.
And Artemis, it seems really quite recently, like you said, like I knew about Orion and SLS for quite a while, but Artemis I wasn't that aware of for like maybe 2 years ago or so.
Yeah.
It seems to have like sprung up, and that's why I mentioned like they've done it really well with media, in that they've sort of taken these things that at one point were like ready to be shelved and like turned it into an actual project that people are excited about. So
yeah, and it from an outside looking in, it looks foolproof. Do you know what I mean? And I think it's like you're saying, because they've worked on all these things individually, now they can kind of just like bring it all together. The only one that I would say is like really new, well, probably the two newest for me, I don't know about you, but probably the Gateway and like the lunar lander like collaboration with like obviously all of the American companies that they've been announcing. But yeah, I guess we should probably jump onto one of those. But effectively, the Gateway is going to be an outpost around the moon. Because I first thought when I was reading this that it was going to be on the moon, but don't they plan on having one on the moon and one around the moon?
yeah, so I think the Gateway one specifically is around the moon, and they want to use that as like a base, because the actual like descending to the moon is really quite difficult. And as I understand it, like if you're trying to fly something to the moon and then pull it in orbit and then descend and then get something back to orbit, that's a lot of sort of rocketry you have to do.
Yeah.
Whereas if you have something that's already there in orbit and you just fly to it and then get yourself ready and then you just go up and down kind of thing, that's much easier. So this Gateway one is this sort of outpost around the moon, and then I think there's plans to sort of use that as a sort of forward operating base to actually put a base on the moon and establish like some sort of presence longer term. In the Artemis program, I don't know if they specifically outline what that will be, but they've mentioned that that's like one possibility for the future. So
I think you're right with that. I don't actually think they've properly announced that they're going to be doing a base on the surface, but they're in talks with it, aren't they? Because of the water that they found on the pole as well. Because that was the problem, wasn't it? Was where do you build it? Because you obviously want it to be near where the resources are. You don't want to just stick it in the middle of the moon. But yeah, no, the Gateway looks really cool. From what I've seen about it, they kind of want to treat it like a lab as well, don't they, for microgravity too? Because from what I've seen, it's like you can, obviously not the average person, but when it comes to time for sending people there, you can like take the trip and then spend like 2 months on that lunar space station, like conducting research, and then you'll be brought back to the International Space Station and then brought from the International Space Station back down to Earth kind of thing. So it's cool. It's kind of like a space elevator without all the wires. It's kind of just like this thing that'll be floating above the planet that you'll descend and ascend to, which, like you said, it probably does make sense, because I can imagine launching a rocket from Earth to the moon to land on takes quite a lot. And if you can just launch it to something that'll dock in the orbit of the moon, it's going to be a lot easier and probably a lot more pleasant for the humans that are going to have to do this too.
Yeah, the thing that surprised me about it was that sort of in my head with Artemis, like the first launch would just be, there obviously be like test launches, I presume, where they, like with Apollo, there'd be a few test launches and then they'll try and do just an orbit of the moon and they'll try to get someone onto the moon kind of thing. I thought they'd go for something similar like that, but it seems like they plan to get at least part of this Gateway. I think they call it HALO, which stands for Habitation and Logistics Outpost. This sort of like core of the Gateway, they want to get that up in 2024 as well. So I don't know if they plan on like launching it at the same time and we're just sort of drop down to the moon for a bit on that very first mission, or they like plan on doing multiple launches in quite quick succession, but they seem to have this 2024 timescale as well of like getting some satellite around the moon. So yeah, I think yeah, in terms of like creating a base, obviously it is difficult, but like we now have 25 years of having people in space, and just the logistics of having an operating space station and supplying it and that sort of thing. The moon is not that far away. It's about a 3-day journey, so it's still not a huge step up, of like a 6-month journey to Mars.
Yeah.
But we can put people in space for a long time, so I think that's the benefit that it gives you. And I don't know if they're planning to, but like you could imagine having a sort of lunar outpost and people sort of on it for months at a time doing research, and then they're able to sort of quickly drop down to the surface and get samples or something, and like that sort of thing. And it becomes a lot more like fluid in the same way that the International Space Station sort of has done.
God, it sounds like a dream, doesn't it? If you're interested in that kind of stuff, like the ability to like be able to do that in the future is going to be insane.
Mm-hmm. The research opportunity is fantastic with this sort of stuff.
I could imagine it's going to be really hard to like bid for them though, like having people like get their like research accepted. Do you know what I mean? Like the pure competition of what people are going to want to try and do up there, I can imagine is going to be insane.
Yeah,
because it's not even just like small research, is it? You've got a lot of corporation as well that's probably going to want to test stuff up there, especially on like a barren rock too.
Yeah. Well, again, there's like, this is potentially a big money maker for NASA. If they're able to basically sell off lab time on a moon base, like that's quite a big sort of marketing opportunity for them.
Yeah,
and I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing. Arguably some of the best research in the world in terms of like medical science and physics is now done not by government organizations or even universities. It's done by companies, that have a lot of money.
Yeah.
If they can like use these facilities to do good research while also funding NASA to do more amazing things in the future, I think that's potentially a good thing, as long as it doesn't become too sort of marketized.
Yeah, I was going to mention this to you actually. I was watching a documentary, and they were talking about, I think it was on Discovery, they were talking about like these university projects in America that were like competing to create have you seen them? You've probably seen them, like these giant 3D printers that are going to print houses on Mars. Yeah. And they were asked about like the moon, and they were basically saying that the moon has 3 different types of seismic activity. It's got like deep moon activity, mid moon activity, and shallow moon activity. And they were saying that deep moon would be like an 8 on the Richter scale here. And then obviously mid's like the 5s. And then shallow moon activity is like the 3s. And then the 3s happen quite a lot. The deep moon ones happen like not so much. But they were saying that actually because of this, they don't think with the materials on the moon, like the rock, it would be a good idea to print with it. And they were talking about like the other ideas that they were approaching. And obviously you've got like building it in the crater, which seems probably like what they'll end up doing. But they were also talking about how, because do you remember when we discussed it? I can't remember what episode it was, but in the news when they'd found those lava tubes on the moon, because they were actually talking about like how they could build aspects of the base, not underground, but in parts of the moon that when it shook, obviously it wouldn't shake, kind of like what Elon Musk's doing with like the Boring Company with the tunnels, because it's more stable, isn't it, underground, because it's not having all the energy just kinetically go to the top and shake out kind of thing. But I think that is going to be something, because you forget that. Well, I forget that anyway. Like, it's not just like, oh, it's hard enough getting to this planet. Like, these places are super hostile environments too. And like, we've got to somehow figure out to get the equipment up there, get it over to that planet, and then down onto the planet, and then build it so that like a human can be on it. And the task is just huge, isn't it? And like all those little things to take into consideration as well. Because like, it's not necessarily either that like the moon gets hit by a lot, like by a lot of asteroids or rocks, is it? It's more so that it doesn't really have an atmosphere or a magnetic field to stop those things from smashing into it. So like I can imagine as well, like logistically, you wouldn't want to build like a $5 billion moon base with the scary idea that at any moment it could just be wiped out by like a rock or something. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, right. Yeah, and that's why I think sort of for short medium term, focusing more on like gateway space stations is like a really good idea, because you still get a lot of the benefits of being close to the moon and having access to it and doing science, but without any of those sort of difficulties, because it's, as I said, like we can build space stations. We have built space stations. We can do that. We've never built anything on another planet before.
Yeah.
They're like, and it's just so incredibly difficult. You know, like I said, 42-ton lift capacity for SLS to the moon. 42 tons is not a lot of stuff. Like, it's, you know, it's quite a bit in terms of like people and food and resources and, you know, space station things. You know, 42 tons is it's a big chunk of a space station, but it's not a lot of building materials.
Yeah, no, exactly. And it's like they were saying in that documentary too, like it's not like Mars where it's got like good materials that you can like send there to 3D print with. Like with Mars, I guess it is a bit easier because you've just got to get like the tools there and then they can print from the materials on Mars. But with like the moon, it's obviously a little bit different. I think what they were saying was the way that the rock is like formed, because it hasn't been like weathered or anything. It's more so like chalk, so it doesn't have like a strong structure.
Yeah, but like the printer thing, I think is really interesting. I'm sure like we will use it in the future, like definitely. But I think the problem is that like all of our systems and like how things work at the moment is we build stuff on Earth and we test it on Earth, so we make sure it works.
Yeah.
Like, and it's all built in like a specialized environment. If you were going to build something on the moon and like or Mars and like print it there, you've got to do so much testing somehow. You know, all of the testing we do on Earth, you have to make sure that it's, you know, it's safe and that it works, and you know, even simple stuff like it's airtight. That's, you know, we could do that on Earth, but then trying to do that remotely with something that's 6 months away, you know, and the worst case scenario is that you build something, it all looks good, you send your first astronauts on a 6-month journey, and you get there and you discover that it's not built right.
Yeah. Well, that was one of the problems that they kind of ran into when they were like doing it. They probably made it more dramatic than it seemed, because they had like this crazy music and this countdown, and they were showing you how they were doing it. But like the way that the team won the prize was that they had like, I think it was like something silly like 72 hours, and they had to build they had to develop a robot that would then 3D print 3 identical houses, and then they were marked based on like the structure, but the material that they used was like Earth-made material, but it was similar to what they'd found from like Mars samples. And it is like you're saying, like it was really fun to watch, because like there was one team that could bash them out like pretty quickly. Like they managed to get all 3 up within like the first 2 days. So like the judges and everyone were like, oh, look at these guys, like they've managed to get that up really quick, while the other ones were like still on the first one. But then by day 3 the roof had fallen in on 2 of them and stuff like that. And it's like, and like what happens, because it's like it's not even just about how it sets or like the material, because I think what they were using were like basically just soil. They were kind of like making mud huts for the structure, and then they would send another robot out there that would like plaid it and stuff like that. But like one of the judges like mentioned, like none of you here have took into consideration that what happens if there's seismic activity whilst it's setting. Like you might have the material that's good against like earthquakes, and it might be built in a way where it can structurally like wobble and stuff, but what happens if that happens, or a dust storm happens and one of your robots malfunctions whilst it's being built? And like you're saying, these are all things that we're going to have to deal with. But I kind of agree with you. It does make sense to do the gateway, and I can imagine that's probably what we'll do with Mars too. Like we'll probably set up like a space station around Mars, and then we'll like have people going to and from the Mars surface. And I think that will probably work like in line with what SpaceX want to do with their Starships and like their own mission. Because I know that they've got their whole like own plan, and they want to like have a spaceport in Boca Chica and a spaceport on Mars. But I can definitely see like the safer way or the more logical way to do it would be to like have an outpost in orbit first, because then you can send stuff to that and then down instead of just straight there.
Yeah, I think so, and I think that's what NASA's sort of aiming for. So I'm sure they know what they're doing.
yeah, no, totally. But yeah, I guess we move on to the next one. So the next one is lunar landers, and from what I've seen from this, it's just NASA are effectively not really building a lunar lander, are they? Aside from the Orion spacecraft, it's going to be more so them partnering up with Boeing, Blue Origin, and SpaceX for this one. And then, because I've seen some like pretty cool renders when they like announced it of like the Blue Origin one that they want to land on the moon, that's going to help them research the water, and then you've got obviously the SpaceX ships and stuff too. But I haven't really seen much about Boeing. I know that they're working on like their Starlander and stuff, but do you know much about their lunar lander?
No, I don't really. I don't know much about the lunar lander. Full stop. To be honest, it's probably the one I know least about. But yeah, these, as I understand it, they're being developed by these companies, and are they planning to use them for like the Earth to Moon missions, or as like shuttles between like Gateway and
it says here that these systems will dock with either Orion or the Gateway.
Okay.
So I'm assuming that they might not, like, I don't think these landers themselves will even be carrying humans. I think they'll be attached to Orion that will go from the Gateway to the lunar surface and then back up to Gateway. But
these are like the Eagle on Apollo, aren't they?
Yeah, I think so. And I think it's probably NASA's way of like allowing some of these companies to like collect this data themselves without having to have a whole space program to get there. Like we'll get you this far, and you can create this aspect of it, and then going forward, that also saves us money because we don't have to figure out that part or pay for it. We can kind of leave it up to you. Yeah,
I guess they're also looking at, particularly SpaceX, that these companies probably have even more experience of landing stuff than NASA do now. So
yeah, no, totally. And I can definitely imagine with like Blue Origin, especially, this is probably a really good stepping stone for them before they start like mining asteroids and stuff like that. I can imagine for a lot of companies, this is a good stepping stone before they start trying to figure out landing on asteroids and doing all that mining.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
But yeah, there's not really much on the lunar landers. I'm guessing that they're kind of leaving that up to the third party more so than they are. So should we move on to the spacesuits, because that's one of your other favorite bits, right?
Love spacesuits.
Yeah, spacesuits are very cool. I'm on the fence with the SpaceX ones. Obviously, I know that they're not like actual astronaut suits that can like go outside the International Space Station. I think they're just designed for like the carrying of the human from one place to the other. But yeah, I'm on the fence. They look kind of cool because they're a little bit Trekky, and I can imagine when you're going to the International Space Station, at least, you don't need to have the big one on if, I guess, the inside is like pressured and everything a little bit more. So I rate it for that aspect, because it like connects into the, like, doesn't it have like, it's not a USB, but like they lock in, don't they, to the machine kind of thing, and it monitors all your levels and everything. So it's kind of cool, but I do get what you mean. They do look a little bit weird, but these Artemis ones, they look pretty awesome.
I don't know if I feel like it's just nostalgia or something, but I just don't think they look as good as the Apollo
as the original ones.
Like, so I'm looking at the pictures from the like launch event for these spacesuits, and there's the orange one, which is which is similar. I think they're the ones that they use to come back to Earth in. They're like almost like diving suits kind of thing, and they're pretty standard. They look like military test pilot spacesuits for like if you're flying a U-2 or something. They seem quite standard. And then there's like the big bulky one with the backpack on that you'd use for actually like moonwalks and stuff.
See, I like the red and blue on it. I think it looks kind of cool. I think, but I don't know. Maybe that's just me. But no, I like the helmet aspect of it, and I like the red and blue. But I don't know. I feel like there should be a middle ground between the NASA suits and the SpaceX suits. Like they just look a little bit too bulky.
Yeah, again, it's all practicality. They've got to do what they have to do, sort of thing. But you know, it on the Artemis one, they've got this like big metal ring across the middle.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, what is that? I thought that might have just been on the thing, but it seems to be in all of them. Is it just connecting it together?
I think it's for like extra. I've seen a few things on this. They've like developed new joints that move more like human joints do. So like, I presume it's going to be like some interlocking rings that allow your torso to move, because that you know, again, that was like one of the problems with the Apollo suits, was that the top bit was quite rigid.
Yeah.
And like, have you seen the videos like astronauts trying to bend down to pick up spanners and stuff on the moon?
Yeah, and like
that's the nightmare.
I like watching the ones that are sped up as well when they like fall over and stuff too. It looks funny because they can't stop themselves once they start going. Yeah, I could bet that like mobility is probably quite a big issue for the spacesuits.
Yeah, so I have seen these ones sort of being used, and at least on Earth, you can quite easily bend down on one knee and pick up something on the ground, which is like their big like thing that they want to do to avoid any embarrassment.
No, I bet. I swear I've seen somewhere. Don't they have another one that looked a bit like it was out of the film Tron? Have they got rid of that one now? Or was that for the Mars missions?
I've not actually seen Tron. It's quite bubbly, sort of Michelin Man kind of thing.
Yeah, but it's got like bright blue lights on it.
Oh, I've not seen that one.
The only reason why I say this is because when I was in when I went to the Kennedy space as a teenager, they had like this section for Mars and what they were going to do at Mars, and they had one of the astronauts, not an astronaut, but they had somebody walking around in an astronaut suit. And it was just lit up. It was just white with these blue lights all over it. Okay. And it looked really, really, really futuristic. But obviously, they're not going to be using it. Yeah, if you... yeah, there you go. I've got it here for you. If you want to see, I'll post it on the... what's it called? On our Google Drive. And anybody listening, I'll post it in the show notes for you afterwards. But yeah... I don't know if this one got scrapped. It's on the script page. But that was the one that they were walking around when they were referencing all of the Mars missions. And I'm guessing it has been scrapped because the Artemis one looks completely different to this. But I don't know. I don't mind the... are you looking at it now?
Yeah.
Yeah, they had somebody walking around in that. Like, it wasn't even like a prototype. Like, it was a proper spacesuit. And I just thought it looked really weird.
Yeah, it's. I think I know what it's. I'm so used to spacesuits having the sort of like very separated bubble space helmet bit.
Yes,
I think that's what it is. So like when so this one sort of the backpack almost like merges into it, doesn't it, and creates like a big hood around you.
Yeah,
and then with the SpaceX one, it's not a bubble anymore. It's like a visor kind of like more square thing, and it just looks. I think it just looked weird.
Yeah. Have you seen the Boeing spacesuit? Because that one looks weird as well.
Yeah, it's like a quite bright blue, isn't it?
Yeah,
yeah.
Without being mean to Boeing, and I'm sorry, Boeing, if anybody's listening that designed that, but like it looks like a fancy dress spacesuit. It's literally what it looks like. But yeah, I don't know. I don't mind the Artemis one. I think it just looks like a modern version of the original one, really, doesn't it? With a few extra features. But I can see now what you mean, even with the Artemis one, that like the visor's a little bit more connected to the backpack, isn't it? It kind of like comes over it a little bit more. But
yeah, I'm surprised. I completely understand why they haven't done it, but I'm surprised they didn't try to use like exosuit technology in it to some degree,
I was
and
going
like
to
having
mention
some
this
sort
to
of
you.
exosuit ability in it. And I know why they haven't done it, because exosuit stuff is very heavy, and if something goes wrong in space, you're screwed, and like you're potentially stuck laying down on the ground and you can't get up on the moon. Like that's not a good look.
Yeah. Yeah, and I guess as well, they probably don't need some of the pros from the exosuit, do they? Like, even lifting stuff on the moon,
Mhm.
you're probably going to be like aided quite a lot with gravity,
Yeah,
and you're not gonna really want to like be able to have like move quicker or anything really, because you want to probably take your time a little bit in these suits, because NASA. I know obviously human life is very important, but the suit is still like so much money, and NASA probably don't want you breaking the suit either. Do you know what I mean?
yeah. I'd be interested to see actually how much like one of those suits costs. I bet it's upwards of 10 million, like
Yeah,
easily.
yeah. Because like, without being that like guy too, like that has got to be something that they worry about too. Do you know what I mean? Like the suit is probably as important as the life. I know they probably would never like come out and say that, but like financially, it's probably going to cost quite a lot of money, and
Mhm.
it's like you're saying, like you don't want, like if you stick an exosuit in it or something, you don't want it like malfunctioning and doing anything crazy. But saying that too, I can imagine it would be pretty cool to have an exosuit, because like especially in when we move into like the commercial age, because can you imagine if someone's like freaking out or like passes out on the moon or something, and the exosuit's able to like walk them back to the base? Just like walk your unconscious body back to the base, or if somebody's like messing around or doing something that they shouldn't, the suit kind of just takes over and detains them.
Doesn't that happen in a movie?
I'm not sure.
I'm sure there's a Mars movie where that happens. And like, I think it's a lady gets walked back by a suit.
That'd be cool though. That'd be cool if they did do that in the future. But then like obviously the other side to that is it could go wrong, and like the suit could malfunction and it could walk you out of your space base into like somewhere random. Like
Yeah.
you don't want to be walked out of it and then 2 miles in your sleep, and then you wake up on like a couple of miles away from Mars, and you wake up to your suit beeping, and it's all your oxygen tank levels and everything are running low.
Yeah.
Especially in like the day of hacking. Can you imagine like turning on the news and seeing like some nation hack another nation, and they've made all their astronauts like walk out of the base? It'd be crazy. But yeah, no, I agree with you. I'm surprised that they haven't done exosuits. Maybe they're like waiting to do that for like planets that have crazier gravities and
Yeah, I guess
stuff like that.
again, like I think like particularly us, we weren't around for like the Apollo missions, and like space is, like the space station has always been there when we've been alive.
Yeah.
Like space is not the amazing feat that it once was, and it's a bit, like we expect it now to be quite developed, but in reality, like we're still just sort of taking baby steps, and this is the only the second time we're going to the moon for a project. So
Well, that's it. And like, I don't think Hollywood and video games and all that kind of sci-fi in general kind of helps with that, because like, especially our generation, and I know generations before us, like my dad and that, grew up with like space and with Star Trek and stuff like that. But like, there's kind of like this weird, I don't know how you'd explain it, kind of like this weird like level we expect ourselves to be at, and we're not even there yet, but we kind of just expect it based off like the culture and like the stuff that we watch.
yeah.
Especially with like rockets and stuff. Like, if I don't think about it, I can very quickly fall into this idea that like when I play like video games and stuff, like we should just have one ship that can like fly in and out of Earth's orbit into space and then land on other planets and stuff, because that's what happens in games and in sci-fi films. And actually the writer's probably doing that for more of a storytelling aspect. It's easier for the plot. And when you really think about it, like we're nowhere near there yet. Like we have to have like 3 different crafts to get you to land on a different planet. It's not just one. And I think you forget that sometimes, because you kind of just get lost in like what's going on around you.
Yeah, definitely.
But I think, unfortunately, as we move into the age of like the military getting involved, especially with like Space Force and stuff like that, I do think you'll see technology like fighter jets that could maybe go up into space a little bit further, or even like exosuits on astronaut stuff. Because as soon as we start like having a reason to put it on there and it's not just exploring, I can guarantee that someone will do it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
And then I think that pretty much wraps up like the segments of the thing. And then there's some news on Artemis as well. So the first bit of news is you've got NASA and the Canadian Space Agency formalized a gateway partnership, and that effectively is going to be NASA and the Canadian Space Agency have agreed between them to collaborate on the gateway, which is an outpost orbiting the moon like we discussed. And I think it's just going to be kind of like the Canadian arm on the International Space Station, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I think they're just going to be providing some of the technology and some of the technology and some of the scientific equipment and instruments, but they're also going to be providing 2 Canadian astronauts as well to the gateway, and 1 astronaut will be on the gateway and 1 astronaut will be on Artemis 2.
Mm-hmm.
And then you've also got the partnership between NASA and Japan, but I'm not actually sure what that is. Oh yeah, here it says they're going to be doing a habitat module, I-HAB, which looks interesting. It's cool that I'm really interested in the Japanese Aerospace Exploration Agency. They're doing some cool stuff at the moment, because haven't they just like increased their budget by like 400% or something ridiculous?
Yeah, it's pretty mad. I think they've sort of gone all in on it, and I think a bit of it is they're sort of trying to catch up with other countries, because they didn't do a great. They've obviously been involved in the space station, and they are obviously doing stuff, but they haven't been doing loads of stuff for quite a while now.
Yeah.
And I think they're sort of trying to catch up a bit. So
it does baffle me a little bit, that the UK isn't doing more. I know we're like starting to now, but like it does surprise me that like we haven't had like our own kind of like rocket or anything yet. Do you know what I mean? And I feel like even going forward, we probably won't. We'll probably just partner up with people and use other people's to like get British astronauts, like basically like what we do now. I don't really ever seeing us having like our fully own pledged space program with like.
Oh, we've got OneWeb. That's
Yeah. I've taken a vow recently to not talk about OneWeb. I got into so many arguments with people last week on Twitter about OneWeb. I'm taking a moment of silence, because I don't know if I like rubbed people the wrong way. I don't know if they thought I was taking the approach that I was like this giant SpaceX fanboy, but I don't know. But I think people just took it the wrong way. But everybody was just coming after me, being like, "Oh, so just because SpaceX are doing Starlink, that means nobody else can, right?" And I was like, it's not really my point. I'm saying more so that we shouldn't just be flooding orbit with satellites. Like, we should either like work together, or all these companies should be kind of like using each other's satellites. We shouldn't just have like 6 companies that don't have to answer to anyone all chucking it up. And then it was like, oh, well, with that mentality, then you're saying that because someone's done it, no one else is allowed to do it. And it's like, no, we just learn from our mistakes. Everybody relax. Because I don't know if you saw, it's the same. Russia have announced one now, haven't they?
Yeah, and Europe.
Yeah, and it's just like, Starlink is already bad enough. Like, I don't even know if I like fully agree with it. Like, I agree with the idea of Starlink and what it's going to achieve. Like, it's cool that you can have internet anywhere on the planet, and a lot of rural areas will get access to the internet now, which is a good thing, because I do believe that everybody should have access to the internet. But like, it's at a cost. Do you know what I mean? And Starlink has already been in the media for how much it's like changed the night skies. And it's not even just like for a visible outlook either. Like, it's not just, oh, I can't take my astrophotography. It's like, it's going to have implications going forward, because it's just more stuff in space. And like, it scares me that we're just allowing loads of companies to do this, and not even companies now, like nations. And like, can you imagine if every nation on planet Earth has to put their own version of it up? Like, that's it. It's done. Do you know what I mean? And like, and it was like we were saying in the space debris episode and in the tourism episode, like, it's getting dangerously close to that point where it's going to be too much stuff going up into space. And like, it just seems like we're speeding it up and we're trying to find ways that we can put even more stuff on space. Like, I was reading the Russian thing. It's crazy. Like, they'll fine you if you sign up to SpaceX.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, it's kind of forcing then the public to have to then. And that's just one company and one nation. And then you've got OneWeb and everything. I don't know. It seems like a lot. And then I feel like we're going to then want to do that to other planets too. Like, what's stopping there being a Starlink or a OneWeb on the moon one day, or on Mars one day?
Yep.
I don't know. I find it interesting. But yeah, that was a bit of a tangent. But on the last little bit of Artemis news, they've already announced the 18 astronauts that are going to lead the mission, and to save everybody lots of time, I've took 4 from the website. We've got 2 men, 2 females, and they're called Victor Glover, Kaylee Barron, Frank Rubio, and Jessica Murr. And you can get the full list off the NASA website. But yeah, it looks cool. I recognize some of them. I think some of them are like International Space Station astronauts, and then some of them have been working with some of the other missions too. So it looks cool. I'm excited for it. It's not that long away now. We're finally... I know we've been in the 20s for a year now, well, almost 2 years. Well, a year and like a couple of months. But like, yeah, we're like finally moving into that time where all this cool stuff's going to be happening now. We're in the decade.
Yeah, like 2024 is going to be awesome.
Yeah, it is. It is. Because don't they want to, like, that's when they're starting all the Mars tests as well. Obviously, we're not sending humans there, but we're going to be having stuff like attempting to fly there.
Yeah, I think SpaceX has said 2024 they want to be getting something to Mars. So
yeah, so
see.
That'll be fun. Should we move on to some news for the week?
Yeah, that sounds good to me. Can I kick this one off?
Go for it.
I had something from last week. So last week we talked about obviously the internet. And for anyone that listened to last week's episode, I think it became increasingly apparent that we recorded that as everything was going off in America at the Capitol. Like we literally came off a call and like I had like BBC breaking news stories on my phone and stuff. Like
yeah, it was a little bit surreal, wasn't it? Because everything that we spoke about kind of came into fruition. We didn't even know it was happening whilst we were talking about it. It was a bit weird.
That's what my news story was about, was Parler being first taken off like the app stores so you can sort of get it, and then Amazon Web Services sort of suspending it. So as far as I think, even till now, for the last couple of days, it's basically not working. Parler is dead.
Yeah.
So I think we mentioned it in last week's episode. Parler is sort of used a lot by the extreme right as like an alternative to Twitter, and we talked about how obviously if you kick people off Twitter, then they just sort of spawn in other places and maybe become worse. While it looks like Parler is now gone. So
it's murky waters ahead, I think, because it is like you were saying, like we kind of went both extremes, didn't we? Where we're like, you want to keep the internet free and keep everybody together, because then that allows like discussion and everything. And if you start banning people off platforms, it gives rise to other platforms like Parler, which then can act as echo chambers. But not even just Parler, like it can also turn Twitter into an echo chamber for the left kind of thing. But with Parler being like banned, then I don't think we really thought about that as an option, because now it's kind of just like it's a bit weird, if I'm honest with you, because like it just seems like one narrative is being silenced. But I also kind of get it, like why they did it, because I don't know if you saw like the reasoning behind it, but it seems like there was a lot of like stuff that was being planned on that platform and even on Twitter. So like Twitter took the action to like ban a lot of people. And then it seemed like they were planning some stuff for like Inauguration Day and stuff on Parler, so that's why they acted on it. Yeah. But it is interesting.
The latest I saw a few hours ago was, so Parler have taken Amazon to court, I think, sort of free speech violations and stuff. And Amazon has basically said, like, for months now, we have been reporting stuff on Parler to you saying you're using our services. This is against the guidelines because this stuff is being funneled through it, and you've not taken action. So that's where it's at the moment. And it was interesting to see on Twitter a lot of people have been sort of beginning to discuss, on both sides, exactly what I was talking about of like, is Twitter a public platform or is it a private company? And like, can they just kick people off like however they want?
Yeah.
Or, particularly with obviously Donald Trump now being kicked off basically everything, you, part of it is, they are a private company. If they don't like what he's saying, they have every right to just kick him off. But part of it is like, you are now denying the president the ability to communicate with people.
Yeah.
And like, so yeah, it's an odd one, isn't it?
Yeah, it really is, and it's been a surreal couple of days as well, especially with all of this like impeachment stuff. It's weird not having him go off or being able to see what he's saying about it. I have been a lot calmer, I'm not going to lie. Life's been a lot less stressful with Trump not going off on one, but at the same time, I do agree with you. It's unusual times, and it is fun to seeing like a lot of not even just like people, but like celebrities and influencers as well, kind of wake up to this idea that like, oh, if you can ban a president, you can ban anyone, kind of thing.
Yeah.
Like nobody's safe. It's not just the Alex Joneses and the Katie Hopkins of like the internet, like. It can be world leaders too, and like it is interesting. And the one thing I do kind of sympathize for slightly, and I probably might get a bit of hate for this, but like Jack's been getting a lot of hate, hasn't he, online? And it's like, I don't really think it was just Jack's decision. Obviously Twitter is like a worldwide company, and there was probably a few people that had to make this decision, but it falls back onto it too. Like I saw a tweet from someone, and they had a very good point, and they were saying like Twitter has like, I think it's less than like 2,000 employees altogether, and like I think it was like 3 to 5 of those employees actually like have a say and like really are like the decision makers at Twitter. And it's like, it's crazy that you've got like that amount of people deciding something for like the world, like the platform that is Twitter. And I think sometimes people forget that like it is humans making these decisions. So like it can always be argued on both sides.
Yeah, like, yeah, exactly. Like, one way to look at it is, these people are sort of defending vulnerable people and stopping hate speech, and the other side of it is you're saying, these few employees basically have the ability to censor anyone on the planet. It's a difficult one. I'm sure once we get off this recording, multiple things will have happened and everything will have changed again.
Hopefully like there's not been any more like world-ending stuff gone on this week, but well, I'll say this little bit of news quick because it's kind of been in line with what we were talking today. But NASA have finally announced that they're going to be doing their hot engine test for the SLS rocket core booster on January the 16th. So I'm excited to watch that. I know they've been doing like some, I don't know if you've seen any of like the videos of them like testing some stuff out in the desert, but it looks cool. I'm excited to see this test. I like watching all these kind of tests, if I'm honest with you, especially even the small companies. I've been watching a lot of like the, have you seen the Skyora company up in Scotland?
Yeah, I've not, I haven't watched it, but I saw some news articles about it.
Yeah, they did their test a couple of days ago, and I think it went successfully. But I don't know, I enjoy it. But they said that this hot fire engine test, they're going to load the Boeing-built SLS core booster with over 700 gallons of cryogenic propellant. So 700,000 gallons. Sorry, not 700 gallons. And they're going to fire it for 485 seconds, which is a little over 8 minutes, to generate a whopping 1.6 million pounds of thrust, which is pretty cool. Obviously, it's not like... Well, it's just a lot, isn't it? where that goes for a test. I can imagine that there are like probably some environmental people somewhere like popping a blood vessel to that, but I guess you got to test it before you use it.
Yeah, yeah. I love the static fire tests. I think they look awesome.
Yeah,
When
they do.
it's always in the desert, and you know, with like dune sap around, it's like shield stuff, and I think it looks. I always think they look amazing. So
Yeah.
I'll be watching that.
What else have you got for news?
In space news, interesting thing I saw about. I never really thought about it. Was so Perseverance, Mars's new rover for the 2020 mission, is due to touchdown. Oh, I've lost the date. I think it was February 18th, sometime in February.
Yeah.
And as part of it, what they're doing is, for the first time ever, they're going to use another sort of probe that's on the move, on the moon. So one of the rover's cousins, so the InSight Mars lander, will try to hear the Perseverance lander land.
Okay.
Using its seismic sensors. I think part of it is to sort of show what they can do, and part of it is they want to. With basically, it's about 2,000 miles away, this other lander, so you're going to get quite a good path of sort of sound through the Mars crust.
Nice.
So you can sort of back propagate it and like look at the sort of structure underneath the planet a bit. Is what they're trying to do. So it's basically all set up, and they're just going to see what they get, and they're hopefully see this big thump as well, not hopefully too big a thump, but
Yeah, coming in too high.
touches down.
Yeah. No, that's cool. That's cool. Well, the other little bit of space news I've got is Rolls-Royce and Rolls-Royce even, and the UK Space Agency are basically launching a study into nuclear-powered space exploration.
Mm-hmm.
And from what I basically saw, what they're saying is this new research contract will see planetary scientists work together to explore the game-changing potential of nuclear power as more plentiful source of energy. And I think you were saying this in one of the episodes, weren't you? It kind of makes sense to go nuclear.
Yeah, and this is actually really interesting because Rolls-Royce, I think for people that know cars a bit, everyone probably knows Rolls-Royce is making luxury cars, and they don't do that anymore because that was sold off to China or something years ago.
Yeah.
But anyway, cars and jet engines. Rolls-Royce make a lot of jet engines. But actually, one of Rolls-Royce's biggest sort of segments is nuclear power. They make the engines for the UK's nuclear submarines, and they've got a team set up to create mobile nuclear plants. So something that would be sort of mobile enough to move on a big lorry in a few units, set it up, and within like a few weeks or months have a nuclear plant operating. And they're sort of pitching it to the government as like, oh, don't spend all these billions of pounds making like a massive fixed nuclear plant, like a huge one. We're just sort of sell you these like trailer bed nuclear plants that you can put in any city around the country, and like jobs are good and kind of thing. So they actually have a lot of pedigree in this, and I guess it was sort of using similar technologies, but like if you could get a miniaturized sort of van or lorry size nuke, that could potentially power, well, it could power a city. It could easily power a Mars base, for example.
Yeah. Well, this is what it's saying, that the two things that they want to do are they want to have nuclear power propulsion, and then they want to have nuclear power like grids, and they want to test them out on the moon first, and they also want to test if, which I think is a bit interesting, they want to test how atoms and stuff may decay more in a vacuum. And then they were also saying that this is obviously great for the UK and post-pandemic, because it allows for partnerships between companies that might be struggling in other sectors being able to like push through in this kind of sector. But their end goal is to basically unlock like the future of deep space travel and have stuff that can go quite far, that can carry humans for the UK at least anyway. So it seems kind of interesting.
Yeah, it looks really cool.
Yeah, it looks really futuristic. It looks kind of like a transformer flower, as I'd say is the best way to describe it.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
it does look cool.
yeah. And then I had one last bit of news, which was tech related. So, end of last week, I think it was, Elon Musk tweeted I think it was use Signal.
Yeah.
So that's Signal, the messaging app. I think it was because WhatsApp are changing their terms of service, and there's a bit of hoo-ha about them going a bit Facebooky on people.
Yeah.
And Elon Musk basically tweeted, use Signal. And what happened is that it caused a 11,708% increase in another company's share price. They're called Signal Advance, because Signal isn't a private company; they're not listed.
Yeah.
A public company are not listed. So this Signal Advance, which is a completely unrelated company, does something completely different. So, like, their stock price absolutely soared over the weekend. And like, because you follow the Tesla share price a bit, don't you?
Yeah.
You're in that, and I've got a few sort of bits and pieces, and I've got, again, I'm not an economist. I have no like insider trading on this or anything, but there does seem to be a huge tech bubble going on at the moment. It reminds me a lot of the like .com boom, where like basically any website you just throw money at it, it's going to print money for you.
Yeah.
And like if you look at some like companies involved in, and it's these companies will do well, in green energy, electric vehicles and stuff. Their share prices over the last 6 months or so have just gone absolutely berserk.
Yeah.
I was looking at one, I think it's called Ceres. They're like a UK-based clean energy company, and their stock price is up 34,000%. That's in a very, very sharp peak.
Yeah. No, yeah, I'd agree with you, and I think it's probably because I think it's down to probably two reasons. I think one of these is that I think the stock market is becoming more accessible now, because you've got obviously apps and stuff. It's a lot easier to be able to invest in companies. And I think especially with the pandemic and stuff, people are like trying to find ways that they can create like sources of incomes outside of their like jobs too, especially young people, because they're either trying to like save for a house or trying to do all those kind of things. So I think a lot of people are like trying to like look at the next big thing, and it does seem like you were saying with like the renewable and like green area seem to be like the two big spikes. But yeah, no, I'd agree with you. Like Tesla has been crazy the last 3 weeks, and there was another one called, is it Plug Power?
Plug's the word.
Yeah, I've got a few in that, and they're insane too. They've been like booming in the last couple of weeks, and it's the same for, is it NIO?
NIO, Chinese Tesla.
Yeah, and like because they announced their sedan this week as well, so everybody's expecting their like share price to go. But like I'd agree with you. You can see a bit of a tech bubble, and it's funny because you can like look at some of the other ones like GM and some of like the petrol companies and stuff, and it's just going down. It's just like driving themselves.
This is the thing, like longer term, it's probably not a bubble. Like if you look at like the share price and the market capitalization of oil companies and of the traditional motor companies, it's massive. It's absolutely huge. And like you'd expect some of these, you'd expect a Maxion Solar to replace Shell as like the big energy supplier. Like I completely get that in 20 years time.
Yeah.
But people, I think part of it is that Tesla's obviously doing really well. And it's sort of like Bitcoin in that people see that it's doing well and like, oh, I don't want to miss out. And they just buy anything. And I think that's what's going on. And I think the bubble will burst quite quickly.
It's gonna be interesting to see what happens going forward. And as well, like, I think when they did their stock split, like back in the summer, it obviously probably helped massively with exposure, because when it was at like $2,000 a share, a lot of people felt like they'd probably like missed the boat. And like when it did like its 5 for 1 and it went back to like $340, whatever it was, it suddenly became an opportunity for pretty much anyone. Even like you could spend your stimulus check on a share. Do you know what I mean? If you wanted to, and like I think a lot of people kind of like bought back into the idea of it, and it's like you're saying. I think at the moment it's kind of just a hype, isn't it? A lot of people want to do it, but at the same time, they've got so much planned for the future. Like I don't know, I can't really comment on it either because like they could just keep smashing it and keep releasing insane products, and before you know it, it could be back up to like $4,000 a share.
Yeah, Tesla's the one that it seems credible. I think what they call it, there will be a market correction at some point, and I think probably short term it will drop a bit or level off. But like Tesla seems credible, but then there's companies that no one has ever heard of, and their share prices are up tens of thousands of percent. It's like they don't have any like underlying values.
I'd agree with you on that. It's well, I think that's also down to companies like Tesla too. I think people are looking at Tesla, and even though like it's still in its early stages, they're looking at like the next big thing. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. And I think they're looking at anything that has potential for the future, and if a share isn't a lot, because like $50 for a share isn't that much, do you know what I mean? Especially if in 5 years it's going to be worth like $2,000. So I think people are just and because of like trading apps and stuff as well, and the ability to be able to trade, I think people are like just making that like decision.
Yeah, I think so.
But
it
is
all
interesting.
I had on it.
It is interesting. The last little bit that I've got, it's not really news, but the UK government, in good old fashion, have now put a thing out for eyesight risk warnings for lockdown screen time. And just like everything they do, what was the one before this? Eat out. I can't even remember. That's how good it is. This one is fight for sight. Right? That's the slogan. And they're saying that looking at something 20 feet away, you should look at something 20 feet away for 20 seconds every 20 minutes. Yeah. And like, I get it. I do agree. Like, you'd want to look after your eyes, and there's like loads of things you can do. You can get those like yellow lensed glasses, or you can have like blue light filters on your monitor and stuff like that. But I don't know why it has to be turned into this like giant thing. The UK government just love a slogan, don't they? Everything is a slogan, I've found in the last year.
3-word slogan, stick it on anything. That's all it is. Like, the most frustrating thing is there's media companies being paid millions to make these slogans.
No, totally. When I heard fight for sight, it just made me cringe. I was like, listen, I got no problem with looking away from my monitor.
Why has everything got to be a battle all the time?
I honestly don't know. I wonder if they just think like, we want them to feel resilient. We want them to feel like they're taking back their sight. And it's like the reality of it is whoever they work for force them to work at home and given them a laptop. And because they don't have that desk or that dual screen set up anymore, they are sitting closer to their monitor. But it is interesting. I wonder, like, going forward, if they'll do anything with it, because I did see that certain companies now are like getting their staff to like sign sheets saying that you have to do this new one. Like my mum phoned me up today being like, oh, has work asked you yet to do this? Because I've had to sign a new sheet today saying that every 20 minutes I'll look away from my screen for 20 seconds. And I was like, no, I haven't had to sign anything. We got told to do it. But I remember like starting in health and safety, they gave you like the basics on how far to sit away from your monitor, adjust your chair correctly, how's your neck looking, and all this kind of stuff. But I guess it is interesting. I guess a lot of people don't think about it because this is all like relatively new to them, isn't it? Like working from home, and it's quite easy to sit on your sofa like with a laptop or not at a desk for 8 hours a day for weeks on end, and that can have loads of health implications on you, because even working in an office has health implications on you if you do it for long enough. So
yeah,
it's interesting, but I don't know. I just thought I'd share it because the fight for sight thing really annoyed me. It's kind of like your electric scooter debate. I was like, just tell people to do the right thing, look away from their screens. Why is it got to be this whole campaign? But hey ho. But yeah, I think that pretty much wraps up this week. It's been less of a rant this week, which I think is good. Last week we kind of just went off of what it didn't talk about anything we said we were going to talk about. But
we might have to revisit the internet at some point.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think it'd be good as well doing an episode maybe in the future, even on like 5G and stuff like that. But Daniel, the Martian on Twitter, has also recommended that we should do mobile technology. So I think that sounds like a good episode for the future as well. But we're going to start working on our AI series now. So get ready for that in the coming weeks. I can't imagine it will be next week, but it's coming, everyone. So me and Matty can finally stop going, oh, we'll talk about that in the future. We will be talking about it very soon. But yeah, if you enjoyed this episode, give it a thumbs up on YouTube and give us a wicked rating on Apple Podcasts because it helps with the promotion of the podcast. If you want to go and follow us on Twitter or Instagram, it's Infinite Void Pod. And we also have set up a Patreon now, and there's 3 different packages with that, and you can get access to our Discord, you can recommend future episodes, and there's loads of other cool stuff that you can go and check out with that one, and we'll put that in the description. And yeah, guys, if you want to hit me or Matty up, I'm at Jacob E. Carson, and Matty is the Matty JMP. God damn it, I'll get it right one day. And yeah, that's pretty much it. And we will catch you in the Infinite Void next week. Hey everyone, we wanted to take a moment to tell you about our brand new Patreon page.
Yeah, so we've devised a load of new goodies that are neatly packaged across 3 different tiers for you.
Tiers start at £3 and go all the way up to £10 a month.
Just to say the Patreon is in no way an obligation, and we're going to continue making the podcast as it is freely available across all the platforms. But if you'd like to support us and show your support, you can now.
So yeah, head over to patreon.com/Infinite Void Pod for more information.